when new engineers join, he makes them raise their hand and say, I promise that this is the hardest I will ever work in my life. So that's the vibe, bro. People are in there 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. on weekdays. They're there on the weekends, available around the clock. Like,
I remember when we invested, it was like just under $10,000 in ARR. Today, you've done many millions of dollars in revenue, even though I can't say how much.
I mean, quite literally, someone said, there's no one like you here. And I think at that point, we were probably one of like 100 people who understood that you could build like this actual human level AI.
You're now approaching $10 million in revenue or ARR just less than 2 years after starting your business. What got you from 1 million to now that number where you're approaching 10?
So,
Samee, welcome to the podcast. You are the first person I've had to convince to come on the podcast. So here we are.
Thank you for having me, dude. I'm happy to be here.
It's interesting, right? Because today, you've grown a lot since we first met. It's been a little over a year since we invested through Olive in PAM. And I remember when we invested, it was like just under $10,000 in ARR. Today, you've done many millions of dollars in revenue, even though I can't say how much, and raised more than a few $1,000,000 as well, even though I also can't say how much. But I think the really interesting thing about your company is you really followed the B2B playbook to a T and had success with it. You picked a good market. You didn't go the route of like creating a big launch video or trying to grow on consumer. In fact, you and your co-founders were very heads down from the jump. And now I think we look back and we see a business that has really strong fundamentals. And I hear that some of the people you've been talking to, it sounds like the general sentiment is, wow, this is just like a really strong business with really good fundamentals. And I think that's something that might be a little more rare in San Francisco these days. So I think it'll be really cool to talk about, what created that.
Well, it helps that we're not in SF. Right.
True, you're in DC.
There were no frills. We're in DC, Northern Virginia to be precise, sleepy Virginia. You only find people working at consulting firms or government contractors. Doing a startup, I mean, quite literally someone said, there's no one like you here. Young team, Muslim team, executing on a startup like this that's actually, high growing and venture backed. It's really rare to see in Virginia, but that means that there's no other game to play. There's no status game. No one really knows or cares. I mean, some people now are noticing, but we just have to focus on the X's and O's, the blocking and tackling every single day. And it helps that we kind of knew a little bit about what we were doing, not from startups, or not from early stage startups, but just how do you write code? How do you build good product? How do you go and sell? Like, we just had the right teammates who knew how to do that, and we put it together, and we don't even think about it that much when we look up. Yeah, I guess we do have a pretty great business.
So let's take a step back here, right? PAM today is the one-liner from what I understand. It's an AI receptionist for car dealerships. How did you come to that idea?
So we didn't have the idea. General theme is that the market pulled us in. And so we were, I was in 2022 super obsessed with AI, just like reading all the stuff, GPT-3 API. Our boy, Sharif Shamim is like doing a, decode or xcode, whatever the hell it was called.
Wow, OG.
I was watching him. I'm just like a nobody watching him, right? And Stable Diffusion comes out. That's why I created that little Elmo picture that's still my AV on Twitter. And then ChatGPT happens. And I pretty much put my 2 weeks in right away. And I said, okay, I'm doing this thing. I'm hacking on side projects. I made a little memory app, kind of like Rewind or, Limitless now.
Nice.
And it was, a little too early. Didn't really feel passionate about it. And then I'm in a coffee shop in Sterling, Virginia with my friend, Abdullah, and we're just shooting the shit, talking about...
Yeah, you can find. Yeah, it's fine.
We're just talking about ideas. And, we're like, dude, maybe let's do consulting.
Oh.
So we're in Northern Virginia, let's do consulting.
How's all gray startups start? Okay.
And we, I basically had reverted back to being an engineer. Abdullah was great at doing business development, and we're grabbing contracts. We made a few tens of thousands of dollars, did some cool stuff, worked for biotech. We also did stuff for nonprofits, and we did a lot for masajid. So we're actually working with the masjid, and we said, look, we'll build you a chatbot. They said, we don't need a chatbot. We need a kiosk that has an AI avatar that interacts with people as they enter the masjid. We said,
oh, wow.
Okay, we're not building that.
Yeah, that's a little scary.
We're not getting into hardware. But they also said, we can't answer the damn phone. So how can you build us something that solves that problem? Now, this is May of 2023. Only people who know ball knew that 11 Labs had released. Only a few people had known how to put the completion engine with the embeddings and everything and try to create a RAG chatbot. It wasn't even called RAG at that point, I don't think. and we kind of saw the future. And I think at that point we were probably one of like 100 people who understood that you could build like this actual human level AI. So Abdullah and I actually went to Hajj together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, with our wives, and we did a lot of soul searching naturally. And then when we came out of that, we decided to incorporate PAM. So it's been about 777 days since we've incorporated PAM. And right then it was called Dream Lab AI. That's still our legal
Yeah,
name. Our
so I looked at
government.
the SAFE document. I was like, what the hell is Dreamlab AI?
Yeah, that's our government name. Our stage name is PAM. And we were still actually building for Masajid. And then we realized, great to do that work, maybe not a venture scale business. And mind you, I would develop the first version of PAM at that time, right? And so I was the lead engineer, with just me and Abdullah still in a room in Ashburn, Virginia. And, this was before Bland. This was before retail. This was before Vappy had
Y'all were
pivoted.
early, yeah.
We were early. I probably was one of like 10 or 15 people who had actually built the thing. It was further validated too when we talked to another team that was building the space from MIT Media Lab. They trialed their product and they tested PAM at that time, and they were like, yo, this is actually like better than what we have. So I was gassed up. But anyways, we talked to so many different customers. We talked to real estate people, dentists. We almost went into restaurants. We talked to so many folks, and the car dealers were so down. They were mind blown. They pulled us in. They were so ready to adopt the product, and the go-to-market just was a lot easier than all of those other categories.
For this episode, we're partnering with Delve. If you're at a point where you're spending way too much time on compliance, you should streamline that with AI automation. Delve can help you offboard SOC 2, HIPAA, and other compliance workloads to AI agents so that your team can focus on growth. It's fast implementation, and it's enterprise-ready security compliance solutions. And you can use the link in the description to get $1,000 off.
And so you realized that you had some product that was interesting, and to figure out where you were going to sell and where you were going to plant your flag in the ground, you talked to all the different industries.
Yep, exactly. We had talked to a guy who runs 100 dentist, dental offices, part of a DSO, and he almost gave us a contract, but he backed out last minute because he said he was going to build it himself. I was like, dude, you're a dentist. And then we talked to a guy in restaurants, and it was a really strong lead, but didn't really like end up materializing. Always kind of felt like it was a little too far away. And then we talked to real estate folks, and it was interesting, but maybe we just didn't feel compelled by it. And when we talked to the dealerships, now, this is how it happened. We're in Fairfax, Virginia at this point.
A lot of Virginia in this episode. Okay.
And Virginia's going to be on the map after this, right? And 5 minutes down the road, there's dealership. It's called Farish Cars. And Abdullah, my co-founder, right? Again, I'm the product guy. I'm the engineer at the moment. Abdullah goes out there. He's our head of go-to-market. And he goes and just walks in cold. Gets a demo scheduled for 2 days later. Now I'm back in the room with Harun and Omar, our engineers, and we're literally reverse engineering their website because we have nothing to connect to their dealership at this point, no integrations, nothing. So we reverse engineer the website, put together a demo. Abdullah goes in, demos it live, and the guy is mind blown. This is February of 24. He can never seen anything like it. And we're getting live updates from Abdullah as he's in the room because the guy's busy, customers are trying to buy cars and all that. And then he texts us and he goes, I'm not leaving until he signs the contract. And we're all hype in the room. And sure enough, Abdullah got him signed. And that was our very first customer. He's still with us today.
Amazing. And I think it was around that point that we started talking. It was around that point I launched Aleph. And it was around that point that we met, I think, at Founders Inc. Or you had put in an application, we met again in Founders Inc. Or there was something like that.
Yeah, I remember very, very well. So again, I'm in Virginia. All I know about anything is through X, right? Or Twitter at the time. And I'm looking and I'm seeing Founders Inc. And it's like, do all like, promising young brown guys seem to be finding themselves at Founders Inc.
The Founders Inc. of 2024, right? Yeah.
And like truly, it was like yourself. It was like, obviously Furqan was on the map because of My First Million to listen to that podcast. And then the guys like Arab and others, I was just like watching them. I was like, okay, this place seems dope. I had an opening, my wife was traveling. And so I said, all right, I got nothing to do. Let me go to SF. So I like literally bum it in SF, and I'm just, I get into Founders Inc. because someone had left the door open more or less. And I'm just working there, and I knew you were there. And then I was eventually like, let me just talk to Omar. And then we dap up, we talk about PAM, and then you're like, all right, bro, if you want it, you're in.
I remember this. Yeah, we were sitting on the second floor. Yeah.
And I told my team about it. We weren't really sure, but we're like, dude, if we can bootstrap a network in SF, and this is the way to do it, with the Muslims, and it seems super promising. Like, let's do it.
Oh, super cool. And then it was like 2 months later or 1 month later that the batch kicked off, and you moved out to San Francisco.
I moved
for like 2 months.
Yeah, 3 weeks with my friend, the other Samee's apartment. I was sleeping on his couch for 3 weeks, and then my wife and kid came eventually. We stayed in Alameda for 3 weeks.
Oh wow, yeah.
And it was the grind, but it was really awesome. And we had so many breaks when we were in Aleph.
What were some of those?
Like, Abdullah was in Miami with a consortium of like
I remember this.
prospects.
Yeah.
And then he got a few contracts signed that way. And then, when I was in Samee's kitchen, I was messaging.
Samee Khan, right? Or Samee Siddiqui, right?
Samee Siddiqui, yeah. Crypto founder and like really good friend. I knew him from like high school. Again, another Virginia head.
I had no idea.
Yeah. And I'm like messaging the team about this one group, the Rick Case group. And, we were just so close to getting them across the line, but we just can't seem to get it done. And so we get this idea. We're like, all right, let's find novelty donuts. So we find a big donut store in Miami. We get the DoorDash guy to deliver it right on the note. This is for Donnell Cruz. This is our guy there. It gets delivered to his desk, and like within 30 minutes, signed contract in the email.
Amazing. Y'all were Delve before Delve.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, as you scaled the company in the past year, and you've gone from like 1 to now approaching 10 million in revenue, what are some of the hiring things that you've had to figure out along the way?
The thing that I don't think people realize is you can find really good talent in places that you typically would never have thought before. Some of our strongest hires have come from like North Africa, right? These folks speak great English. They have they have great education, and they also like basically live and breathe on TikTok. So they've got the same culture as us too. Right, they're sending memes and everything. Like they're totally hip, and they're awesome culture fits. And our customers love working with them because they're young, they're hungry, they're
customer
eager
facing.
to please, and they're customer facing. And that actually has been one of the big areas of leverage for us, where I think we've been able to offer a level of service and quality without it necessarily, burning up all the cash in the bank.
And is this through Ryan's company, through Founders Arm?
This is through the great folks at Founders Arm.
Shout out Ryan. Shout out Founders Arm.
We hired our first VA through Founders Arm during Aleph.
Oh, so a year ago.
So quick story. We're there. Someone's yapping about virtual assistants, and they ask raise your hands if you would use a virtual assistant. And almost everyone, this is like the B2B circle, almost everyone raises their hand. And then I go to Rayan's Twitter and I said, bro, like, you need to be here right now. Like, what are you doing? Right? Everyone here is trying to buy your product.
Dude, I know. I kept telling him to come to these events too.
So that's what he does though. So he drops everything. An hour later, it's Aleph Sunday. He comes there and we sit and we talk about it. He understands the need. He goes, sources the VA. We have one call. This person's amazing. I'm like, I'm so in. And that person is still with us today. And we've got probably like 10 more from him. Yeah.
That's crazy. I didn't realize you had so many people from Founders Arm.
Yeah.
It's a great plug because I became a co-owner of this company like, 5 months ago?
Dude.
Foundersarm.com.
Dude, shout out Founders Arm.
You got hyped. And so now let's talk about like the actual growth of revenue, right? So did you have to make any product changes to go from like that first like couple $1,000s of ARR to that first $1 million?
100%. Now we're car guys. We know the business in and out as well as anyone. We spend so much time with our customers to this point, like thousands of hours if that's possible, right? However the max number is, like that's what we've done. Back then we knew nothing. And so when we demoed to Fawad at Farish the first time, it was a sales product. That's what he wanted. He's a sales guy, right? All dealership owners, for the most part, are former sales guys. So we built a sales product, and then we went live. We got 0 sales calls. No one was calling to buy cars. That's not how you do it, right? You go on the website. You're finding other ways. You walk in. You're not calling because there's better ways to do that. Everyone wanted to schedule a service, and so when we saw that, we overnight pivoted the entire architecture of the product, learned everything we could about the service department, and built out those flows, built out all the integrations, and then we saw the product just sing. The ROI was immediately like super positive, and early customers got a really great deal because we were just trying to get started. And it was just obvious that this was the wave. And so when we built the service version of the product, that's the PMF moment that took us to the Rick Case Group, which was like 11 more stores. And then, later in the summer, we signed another enterprise deal with like a 50 store group. And it was all of that core service product that is still like the product today.
Did you know what it would take to build the team to be able to support going from 10,000 to 1 million?
No.
What did it take?
Yeah, so early on, we got some interest from some local Virginia, entrepreneurs, the MicroStrategy guys, and we were really interested in like working with them. Obviously these guys are legends, and we never really got into bed with them or anyone like them though. We always felt that this is the new age.
Yeah, I remember. This is what we talked about in the library.
Yeah, exactly. Got the term sheet, came back to SF. I literally flew in the morning or overnight to DC, flew back, and then we ended up getting a term sheet. And great guys, so much respect for them. And maybe we should have took it knowing what we know now, but we decided not to because we're like, oh, we're gonna build an AI native company. We're gonna change the way we do things. 10-person billion-dollar startup, right? That was our goal. And then we realized dealerships need a lot of love. They need a lot of touch points. They have unique needs. And to build a really great, successful business in this space requires a lot of sweat equity. That is downstream, or in success is downstream of a great customer service and support motion. And so we did not know what it took to build to 1 million. We still built it to 1 million anyways. I mean, we only had like 4 people at the company at that time, including some contractors overseas. But to get to multiples of that now, we had to really build out a full-fledged team. We had to kind of go against the grain of what everyone was talking about in terms of how to build an AI company. And sure, we use AI everywhere. It's one of our core values, embrace AI, and everyone gets a lot of leverage out of what they do and moves faster. And there's probably less people that we would have to hire to operate at the scale we're operating at. But, ultimately, we had learned so much more than we thought we knew at the time.
And so when you're actually thinking about the direct go-to-market motion from, that 10K to 1 million point, is it like LinkedIn outreach? Are you just walking into dealerships?
Yeah. So in this business, the number one thing you can do is get on the phone and get in the door. And so Abdullah was, on the ground, just going to dealerships every single day, just grinding, calling, walking in, getting yelled at, getting told not to come back, right? Doing all the extra things, coming back a second and third time anyways. That's how we kind of brute forced our way into the first few customers. Then it became about referrals. And so people would love us. They love the service we provide. The product blew their mind. They wanted to tell their friends about it. So they start to tell their friends. And then we also realized that this business is a traditional business. Relationships matter. So then we partnered with folks who've been in the business for 20, 25 years, 50 years.
Partnerships, okay.
Yeah. And then we leveraged those channel partners to also get that next wave of growth. The interesting thing there is the big partners you would think would be great were actually really bad at selling our product and selling the future. The partners were great, were the small ones who
cared a lot.
They cared a lot. This is their life. Their friends are their customers, right? Our customers are friends. And those folks are the ones who still today, now a much smaller portion of our total count, but early on, they were a major channel of growth for us.
When you're now trying to like define these early channel partnerships, what are like the tangible steps or things that you had to consider so that someone who's listening to this can actually come away with a plan on how to create their own partnership?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I guess we didn't know what a great channel partner would look like. In some ways, they found us. I mean, they were really excited about AI. They were mind blown by the product. I guess there was a lot of tailwinds from being early. And now looking back in 2024, it really felt like the only game in town. And so, but now we're sitting where we are and what we've learned, I think the number one thing that you can do is to, one, make sure that you know how to structure a fair deal with them, right? It's probably less common in other industries, but in our industry, folks would really try to take you to town, right? And they'd really try to take advantage of you. So you need to do some research, talk to some folks, know what the deal structure should look like. And then the second thing you need to do is treat them as an extension of your team. And so you need to go co-sell with them. Who cares if they're supposed to sell the product for you? Go do the first 10 sales with them. treat their customers as your customers. One thing about channel partners that often goes wrong is that people, those customers retain less because your channel partner, as much as they want to sell your product, they don't know it as well as you do. They don't know how to make your customer successful. And they're probably selling 3 other products, right, that are unrelated. And so treat those customers like your customers, continue to educate them, bring them along, make that shared Slack channel, do the standing weekly syncs. Really have to put in a lot of effort to make it work. And if it does, then you'll get a lot of leverage out of it.
Around that time where you had just crossed $1 million in ARR was when you got accepted into HF0, which is one of right now the coolest programs or accelerators in San Francisco, right? It's one of the largest residential houses in the state. And it's you and I don't know, 10 other teams all living under one house. The guy who started it, Dave, he's this crazy guy that is really good at building companies. And I remember you walked in, you and Abdullah specifically, you walked into that, I remember, and you came out as completely different people. What was that experience like?
So that experience was really interesting. HF0 was amazing. There's so much to be said about it. We got rejected twice. And so we put in our application in the summer for the summer batch, didn't get in, put it in for the fall batch, didn't get in, but they were noticing our growth. And one of the guys there, Ryan, our guy, he was really into us and really liked our vibe and really liked how we were growing, what we're doing in the traditional industry. It was down the fairway B2B business. And then the third time when we applied, we got the interview, 10-minute interview. Dave and Evan are on the call grilling us. And we got through that and they said, okay, look, the batch is almost closing, right? We're almost making all our decisions. If you want to interview, the last day is tomorrow. And so I'm looking at Abdullah, I'm like, hey man, I did the Olive thing. If you want to do this, go out there and go get it. And so Abdullah, sure enough, books a flight.
It's in-person interview.
Goes there, in-person interview.
Oh, amazing.
And absolutely kills the interview, right? Leaves these guys thinking he's the new coming of you saw this stuff, right?
Dude, I remember they asked him a question about what's something that proved greatness, and he's memorized the Quran, so he was I can recite any ayah or any verse from a 604-page book from cover to cover without making a single mistake.
Bro, what he said was, you're right, what he said was, I'm kind of autistic. I memorize books from cover to cover.
That's a very different way to put it.
Yeah. But they ate it up, right? They ate it up, and I think that was the right decision. I mean, that kind of chutzpah, that kind of machismo, that's what you need to go take it to the next level. And it's that combination of Abdullah's charisma on the go-to-market side, which also here's a kind of a tangent only for this crowd. I think the best go-to-market people and leaders will come, in our community, will come from those who give khutbahs. Because to give a khutbah, you're up there for 30 minutes just yapping, extolling virtues of what you're talking about. You're preaching, right? And you need to have a little bit different in you to go and do that again and again and again. Or maybe if you're a good da'i on the street, trying to convince people to convert or something. Those people would make amazing salespeople because it's the same idea. They're pitching a vision, a future, what this product can do for you. Anyways, yeah, so HF0, we get in, we go, and that program, first, obviously the terms are amazing. But inside the
What are the terms? It's $1 million uncapped and then a small program fee.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, more or less, right? It's better than YC's terms for sure. And it's more exclusive than YC. And it's shrouded in mystery. And, not to blow up their spot, but what they do is they put you in the second largest home in SF. 40 plus rooms, 10 other teams. It's meant for repeat founders. So when you go into that room, you have top 100 YC founder next to you. You have a guy who's IPO 2, billion dollar plus businesses. All these crazy founders, geniuses in the room. And then we're there as first time founders, one of the exceptions because of how well we were growing and what we were doing. And they strip away all of your distractions. They literally teach you how to say no. There's a shortcut in my phone now that auto-completes into a thing for me to reject requests to hang out or do whatever.
Yeah, I remember because I asked you to hang out when you were in town once and you sent me something. I was like, this is a keyboard shortcut. There's no way he actually wrote this out. This dude does not send me, this dude does not text me with periods.
That's facts. That's facts. And that's
you're hey, come hang out at our house this Friday. And I was like, you little.
Yeah. Literally community dinner. That's the only time you're allowed to see people. And what that does is it creates this environment where 24/7. All you're doing is thinking about product, thinking about your business, and also thinking about go to market. And that happened during Ramadan for us too. And so we were like hyper locked in, like no food, just straight caffeine. I'm taking caffeine pills in the morning that are releasing around 4 p.m. to get my second wind. And we're praying Tarawih in like the room that's used for like the gym that's in the house. And it was super intense, but it was filled with so much barakah.
There was a lot of focus, and there's like a lot of like kind of craziness that surrounds HF0. I remember Abdullah was like, hey, you need to talk to Dave, who started HF0, about like, you know, what Aleph could be. And so I was like, you know what, fine, that sounds cool. I want to talk to him. HF0 has like a crazy hit rate. And I text him, I'm like, yo, let's hang out sometime. He's like, cool, I'll come to Jummah. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Yeah, come to Jummah. Yeah, 100%. He's like, he came. We were doing indoor Jummahs at the time. He like listened. And for those who might be listening and not know what it is, it's like a Friday sermon that like Muslims go to every single Friday. It's like a lecture. And he came. He was like, wow, this is incredible. It was Sheikh Al-Din Al-Bakri, you know, who's the GOAT. And afterwards, he's like, yeah, we need to talk about Aleph. I was like, for sure, let's do it. He was like, come to our house. Let's pray Fajr. And I was like, okay. I was like, because like Dave's not Muslim, right? Yeah. But he like embodies so many of like the characters from like the short time I've known him. It's like he embodies so much of the like the characteristics of like Islam. And so he was like, yo, come to the house, pray Fajr with us. I was like, okay, sounds good. I show up the next morning at the house at like 4:50 a.m. because it's like the summertime and like the sunrise time is super early. And also, again, context for the audience, Fajr is like the morning prayer that Muslims have to pray before the sun comes up. And it was like him, it was Jordan, who used to be at Versi, and now he's doing the film stuff at HF0. And it was Abdullah leading, and I think Harun was there, or like there was one other Muslim guy who was there. Oh, the Catholics guys.
The Catholics guys.
And, you know, afterwards, he like gives me a tour of the house, and he's like, this is our kitchen. We have a chef who comes in so that founders don't need to worry about food. And I'm like, you have a chef here? Like founders don't need to worry about food? Like this is absurd. And he like, in the best way possible, and he like shows me this room that has like the daylight, like bright lights like blasting. He's like, yeah, you know, this is so that founders never see what time of the day it is and they can really lock in, and it's like a AC, like well lit room. And it's like, there's like no aesthetic value here. It's just a bunch of desks and chairs. And no one looked up when I walked into the room with him. And mind you, at this point it's maybe 6:30 a.m., 7 a.m. and there are like a lot of people in there. And that was like, I think one of the most unique experiences I've had even since coming to San Francisco like 5 years ago.
100%. I mean, they create what it's called, literally it's called a container, which is when you step in here, first of all, they make you take a vow. So they don't let you back in the room. First, they take you out into the woods for 3 days.
Set some bid'ah, bro.
The tone. You go, yeah, literally you give bay'ah when you walk into the room, and then everyone hypes you up, and then you're there. And for the first 2 weeks, you're like not even allowed outside. Like, I mean, you can go outside if you want, but the point is like you're just locked in. And during those first few weeks, like I remember stepping outside to like talk to Harun about something, because there was no rooms, and I was like, yo, it's kind of cold. And I was like, oh yeah, I haven't been outside in like 36 hours. like they literally give you vitamin D supplements to make sure that like you're okay.
Wow.
Because you're not going outside. And you know, one other tangent that for this audience I think that would be interesting is, so when Dave is called, I'm on the phone and we're actually not sure if we should go to HF0, right? We got the terms and we're interested, but we're not sure. We're debating it internally. And then I'm talking to Dave about funding and investors and all that. And he goes, look, one thing you really have to do is change the power dynamic. And to do that, you really need to lock in, right? You need to be sturdy on your foundation. And I said, and he's like, so are you spiritual? And I said, I was not expecting that from you. Like, yeah, I consider myself spiritual. And he goes, all right, what do you do to really lock in? And I'm like, well, there's this practice called tahajjud where like you wake up, you know, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., even before Fajr, and you pray, and that just gives you so much resolve for whatever you're about to do, right? And he's like, okay, when you're going to go pitch investors, then you're going to pray tahajjud, right? I'm like, okay. And then we show up to HF0, and in front of everyone, I mentioned this group of illustrious founders, Dave's like, hey, and to start the batch off right, we're all going to get up at 4 a.m. and we're going to pray. And he's like, who in here can tell me about this practice? And I was like, sweating. Like, dude, Dave, like, I mentioned that to you. Like, I didn't mean
to blow up. That was supposed to be like a one-on-one thing and blowing up my spot.
And then we ended up doing it. And that morning it was Dave, Evan, Jordan, and the PAM team in the room. And it was really powerful. It's really so powerful to be validated in a place where it almost feels a-religious at times, maybe anti-religious at times. But
San Francisco.
And especially coming from Virginia. And but Dave really, welcomed everyone. and created this environment where Pam literally doubled in that time span.
Oh yeah, you hit your. I remember you guys were like, yeah, we just hit 1 million, and we're walking out of here with 2. And I was like, okay, yeah, like that's dope. And it was like Ramadan. I'm like tired, like hadn't eaten that day, fasting. And Abdullah's like locked in, like maniacally so. And we had the Olive Gallery, and you guys would be like, yo, we can't come tonight because we're not allowed to leave. And I was like, just come. And you're like, Abdul was like, no, sorry, we're in the container. We're focused. I was like, brother, just come hang out with us for 5 minutes. But it really worked because, I mean, it was like for months after that, like when I would talk to Abdullah, like it was a big part of like how he thought about the company. He was like, no, we're locked in, we're focused, yada, yada, yada. You see like the Catalyx guys, they went back to India and they created their own version of the container and their own version of the residency.
100%. You know, one thing that we learned from that experience was we need to recreate the container just like the Catalyx guys in Virginia, right? And so how can we get SF level output back home? And that's what we do now. Like when we go, you know, when new engineers join, this is totally Harun, my co-founder and CTO's idea. When new engineers join, he literally makes them this is like during the interview process, he makes them raise their hand and say, I promise that this is the hardest I will ever work in my life. And they need to do that if they're going to get an offer from Pam. And that's kind of that's the vibe, bro. People are in there 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. on weekdays. They're there on the weekends, available around the clock. Like the HF0 has infused itself into Pam.
If all this startup stuff sounds interesting to you, we're currently helping some of the fastest growing startups in San Francisco hire designers, engineers, and growth marketers. So if you're one of those and you want to work at one of the fastest growing companies in San Francisco, there's a link below to apply and we'll connect you with everyone that's hiring. Exciting thing about San Francisco is like the serendipity that comes from living here and being surrounded in a city that's like really not that big, of like the smartest people it feels like in the world, right? Like when you get an O1 visa, a lot of these people, maybe I'm just in the bubble, they come to San Francisco. You know, when you think about founders who drop out of school, they end up in San Francisco. You want to go raise your Series A, you come back to San Francisco. And it almost feels like the chaos and the serendipity of being around and going to not like the public events, but like going to like different people's houses and going to a lot of these like private events. That is almost like the moat of San Francisco. But it's interesting because when I talk to you guys and when I talk to people that go through HF0, they look at that as like a bug, not the feature. So it's like a really interesting line where it's like you guys are saying, hey, the thing that made it special about coming out to San Francisco was not leaving, not going to San Francisco, and not seeing sunlight. And then you go back to Virginia and you're like, yeah, like this is why we're going to make it. And it's just the same thing of, hey, we're just like not going to leave. Like we're just going to stay fully focused. Do you ever think about all the opportunities that you might be leaving on the table, or all the people you might have been able to hire, the investor that might have led your next round that you didn't actually interact with because you never left or because you were so locked in?
I think it's something that we thought about a lot. You know, the thing I always say about San Francisco is that it's where the smartest people go to win the biggest prizes. And, we met this one guy in Ashburn, Virginia, early in Pam. Okay. And I'm like talking to him, and this kid is way too smart. He knows everything about LLMs, and this is fall of 23, and knows how to train them. And, you know, we definitely had a conversation about him joining Pam, but where that ended was I'm saying, dude, you can't be here. You need to go to SF. And sure enough, now he works for Elon. He works at XAI.
Oh, no way.
And so it's absolutely true. Like there's just a level to San Francisco. Like there's levels to this game, and San Francisco is like the highest level. However, business is 3 things. Revenue minus expenses equals profit, right?
Okay, sure.
And you can optimize for that anywhere in the world. And what we've been able to do, and I think we're really fortunate with the founding team, is that we have people who are just the best at their certain craft, right? You know, I do product amongst other things. You know, Harun has our CTO, Omar is our head of integrations, and Abdullah is our head of go-to-market. And that nexus was going to work wherever it was, right? I think looking back on it, it's like we're going to do great no matter what we did, where we did it. And Virginia is where we chose to do it. And, you know, there's been folks from SF who've moved to Virginia, folks from Pittsburgh who moved.
Yeah, y'all took Anujan, bro. Come on.
And so there's folks from Houston, amazing talent that we're able to recruit and bring here because 1, we're doing really great work, and 2, we're a values aligned company where people like, it's hard to find folks like us doing what we're doing the way we're doing it. And they're excited to join that mission.
So let me ask you a direct question then. One of the people on your team's name's Anujan. He was a co-founder of a company that went through Aleph Batch Zero and they exited. I would have never imagined in a million years that he'd move from San Francisco to like Virginia. What was that conversation like? How do you convince someone to seemingly like do the opposite and like almost like revert back to what they were before?
I think you should ask Anujan, right? I don't want to speak for him or steal his thunder. He's an incredibly smart guy, incredibly hardworking, and has done, the startup game multiple times, right? He was a co-founder of and a CTO in the past. And and actually his first work with Pam was at HF0.
Yeah.
So to be clear, like there was like this bridge in SF that then, got him, locked into the team. And I think for him, it was just like, look, the opportunity is obvious. I have an opportunity to make a huge impact. He's our lead engineer on our core product, right? There's no bigger role that he could be filling. And that was enough, right? And I think the culture that we've built in Virginia and what we've been able to do with that team has made it fulfilling. And, we definitely have to like, he invites us to like Catan nights and we're going to have, we have to do those kind of things too, right? To kind of recreate the SF vibe or whatever. But no, we've been able to, I think, it's a combination of the environment, the culture, and the opportunity. And one thing that helps is that we're winning.
Yeah,
right.
No,
I mean,
winning solves a lot.
Right. Exactly. Like, I'm a big, sports fan. And one thing is that, there's no drama in a locker room when you're winning. All that stuff gets exposed when you're losing. And so, momentum helps.
You're now approaching $10 million in revenue or ARR just less than 2 years after starting your business. What got you from 1 million to now that number where you're approaching 10?
So, here's another tangent. I just have to mention the story. It's so incredible because we're getting to the point that we're at, and it's amazing. But when we first started, we went to this conference, and it was in Arlington, Virginia.
Oh God!
And it's called Voice in AI. We said amazing, right? So we met the Play AI guys. We met Deep Graham folks. And then we met this one guy with a coding startup. And I'm using Cursor at the time, and I'm talking to him, and I'm like, man, you got to try this. And he's like, no one's gonna download an ID. I was like, I just did, and I'm kind of basically giving him crap to his face about his business. Fast forward, a few months ago, they're getting acquired for $3 billion by OpenAI. So this was Varun, yeah, in Windsurf.
No way.
And so 2 years. We're doing well. There's levels to this game. We're happy to be where we are. We're going to win in the long run too. But how did we get from where we entered the year to where we're going to exit it? I think it's taking on the capital, right? We had an engine that was humming, and it was constrained by fuel. And so
what was it constrained by? Like what specifically did you not have?
We didn't have, $1 million check from HF0 prior that really opened our minds to how we could hire. So we ramped up go-to-market. We ramped up engineering. We ramped up customer service and customer success. And those things helped us get so much more leverage from what we were doing. And then the snowball really does start to compound, right? And so, more folks want to partner with us who didn't. More folks want to, are interested in the business and want to either join or tell their people about it. And we had more money to go to events and get out there and establish our brand. And then most recently, do really cool things like a commercial launch video that ends up really building our brand and just elevates us to another stratosphere in terms of how people think about us, like a legit company now, not just like scrappy startup. Actually, we're starting to get challenger marketing from smaller companies. They're straight up copying Pam, but they're also like trying to say Pam's not the thing, it's us. And it's like, we were in their spot just, 12, 14 months ago. And so, it's a combination of all those things, really just scaling up what's working. Once you have PMF, you can kind of feel it. And then, basically just, it's the same execution loop to get to the next place and the next place and the next place. Obviously, there's a lot that's bundled into that execution that we've done. Go-to-market, product engineering, all that together is what's needed. Building a great culture in our business, a service-oriented culture is so important. Dealers have so many needs. They've been so neglected. We don't say no. We go in there and we just find a way to make them successful. We know that's how we're going to be successful. Everything we do is downstream of the value we provide to the customers. And so all that together has helped us get to this point. And I think that's the exact same formula that's going to get us to the next 2-3 orders of magnitude.
I feel like I have to ask this because you guys went through Aleph, and also because I've had some really interesting conversations with Abdullah about this. How do you think faith and like your religion impacts the work that you do and the way you think about the work that you do?
It gives us a lot of motivation. The answers, the questions to, or the questions about meaning, why you're doing something, purpose, they are obvious and apparent to us. Like that's not even like a thing that goes across anyone's radar. It gives us a grounding, when you wake up in the morning to pray, when for us, we're all almost all family people, right? Three of the founding team has like wife and kid or kids. And so that gives us the grounding that we need. When we were in HF0, people would be like, man, I don't know how you guys are doing this startup stuff and all the family stuff. It's like, like I'm going to figure all that out later. You already have it figured out. But faith is what's given us, the culture, our religion, our values is what led us to that point. And I think, it also helps us act ethically in a way that's surprisingly appreciated in the market.
Why surprisingly?
As Muslims, we're, self-conscious about the stuff we can't do, right? We can't drink, we can't like party, or, in the traditional sense.
It's like the OGH of zero, just gives you focus.
Yeah, it gives you focus 100%. But then it also, informs how you interact with people, how you deal with people. We don't bill customers who aren't seeing the value. We don't, hold people over a barrel and act with like real, sharp elbows as others have done with us. And, when I talk to, and it helps us in recruiting, when I talk to senior people who have joined the team, they say like, you guys are good guys. Like I could tell like, you guys are good guys. Like I want to work with y'all. And that is something that seems small, but I think in the long run will compound and show a lot of benefits.
And since you mentioned it, how do you actually balance like family and work? Because I remember you guys have had to travel a lot, and both of your kids are like very young. I was thinking about you and Abdullah specifically, because I don't know the details of anyone else, but I mean, I've seen you guys like, basically pack up and leave very quickly for very long periods of time. And like, there's the I think Uber tweeted this. He was like, as a founder, as a founder, pick two, and it's like sleep, family, company, right? You can never have all three. But like, how did you actually go ahead and make it all work?
I mean, that's so obviously false. There's so many people who've gone against that, including like Steve Jobs. Like even there's a lot of people who've disproven that. But and I actually took a page out of Steve Jobs' book, right? So Steve Jobs, my inspiration. No surprise, he's inspired like all of us. And one thing that he did is he would always go home for dinner. Right? Maybe not early days, but later on when he had a family, that's what he would do. And so I would make that a point. I do make that a point. I get up almost at the same time every day. Everyone knows it. I go home, I have dinner with my family. If you need me, you can always huddle me and call me if stuff happens. You have to do that. But I try to spend that 1 to 2 hours every single day with them on the weekdays. And then on the weekends, do a little more. But then when duty calls and the startup needs it, then we go all in. Right? We spend extra time at the office. We'll go and travel. I'm here now. And our family is extremely supportive and extremely understanding. And, when I always kind of wondered if it was just a cliche thing to get on a stage and like thank all your family and everything, your wife who supported you. And the thing is, it's like, it's 1,000% true. Like without that kind of support network, there's no way that we could do what we're doing and maintain our sanity, because we go home and we that feeling is so fulfilling and it's so wholesome that, a lot of times I feel so lucky. I feel so blessed to be in the spot where, one, I'm living my dream, obviously, and we're having success, and that's great. But we also have, the family life that makes it all feel like really worth it.
Well, I feel like that's a great place to end the podcast. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it as always.
Appreciate you, bro.
Excited to see what happens.
Yeah, shout out my co-founders, the founding team. Couldn't have done this without y'all.
The family, the kid.
Abdullah, our head of go-to-market, freaking savant. Haroon, our CTO, absolute unit. Omar, our head of integrations and founding engineer, just like total beast. He's taking stand-up calls every day with his kid. Little cute baby in his lap, and none of this stuff stops us. This is the reason why we're all successful and why we're gonna go a really long way.
Amazing. I'll see you back here at the 100 million.
Yes, sir.